Yes, 2-5 is here. Sports Reports is ordered. 2-5 Daily. Join us tomorrow where we can recap this crazy weekend of football. But for now, I'm going to talk about some crazy football, but related to the world of conference realignment. So do me a favor out there. Like, review, subscribe, rate, share, do all the free things. Do all the good things. So, it's been a crazy day all over the college football world. Over the weekend, there have been reports coming out that we were going to see some Pac 12 movement. A lot of speculation. Memphis, Tulane, maybe South Florida, to a lesser degree, maybe UTSA joining the Pac 12 to fill it out. But then something odd happened. The Pac 12 decided to be cheap. So, throughout the course of history, you've heard me refer to Cal and Stanford as the snobs. They think they're better than everybody. So, fast forward, there's no more Pac 12. It blows up. Here's Washington State and Oregon State, these two poor little victims that got taken advantage of. Everybody off the greener pastures. And here they are stuck with the brand of the Pac 12, a whole war chest of money, but no conference outside of themselves, the Tupac. So then, over the course of time, I had to remind you, everybody talked about it. Before the Pac 12 imploded, San Diego State was going to join. That was the next move. They were fresh coming off the Final Four. Everything was looking nice. Everything looked perfect. Another Southern California presence. And, you want two of those in your conference, if possible, USC, UCLA. So that way you can make your schools go there in back-to-back years. So the years that you don't play at USC, you could play at UCLA. So that was the plan. But then everything hit the fan. We already knew USC and UCLA were leaving. We didn't know that Oregon and Washington was going to effectively pull the plug, right? So then we got to that point. San Diego State stayed put. They had their public beef with the Mountain West. Hey, we're leaving. I was just playing. You know I love you, girl. And then they came back. So everything was whole. So going back to the early 2000s, the mid 2000s or so, 2008, 9, 10-ish, everybody used to always have these ignorant conversations. Well, if Boise really wanted to be a big boy, they would just join the Pac 12, as if Boise had the decision-making power to make that happen. They didn't. So it led me to question, why did the Mountain West break up in the first place? If they had any foresight to some degree, you had TCU, Utah, Boise, BYU, all entrenched. But they moved on to greener pastures because nobody wanted to be left behind. There was no loyalty. Imagine the Mountain West we would be talking about today. Okay, we fast forward. So over the weekend, all these reports are coming out saying this is what's going to happen. This is going to be your new Pac 12. So what did we end up with? You need 8 teams in football to be a conference. And both right now, as of this recording, have 7. Because Memphis, Tulane, South Florida, and San Antonio, UTSA, decided to stay behind because the Pac-12 had this money, this $400 million. The AAC schools that I just mentioned, $27.5 million buyout to get out of the conference. And the Pac-12 said, yo, here's 2.5. So not only are you picking up the other $25 million if you're these schools, but now you got to figure out traveling. And it's not just football and basketball. We're talking about volleyball, baseball, all the other sports, the non-revenue sports, right? So here's $25 million to the AAC over a 10-year period. And here's the money that you have to pay to travel to Boise, to travel to Oregon, to travel to Washington State. That ain't going to work. So I think this was a case of the Pac-12 smelling its own ass thinking their shit didn't stink. And lo and behold, you don't hold all the cards. Washington State and Oregon State are schools that were a part of a Power 5 conference trying to merge with a bunch of G5s. So therefore, there's always going to be that I'm better than you attitude. So no matter who leads the Pac-12, this is always the mess that we find ourselves in because there is no leadership. There's just figureheads and names. So now what? You go back to the drawing board. UNLV was on the table. Now UNLV is the stand in the Mountain West. Air Force was supposed to be AAC bound. They committed to the Mountain West. So there was talks. Are Nevada and UNLV a package deal? I would hope not, because some schools are bigger than their conferences. Memphis, like I always mention, should have been in a Power 5, should have been in the Big 12 at least. UNLV should have been, Las Vegas market. Back in the day, the history of the Running Rebels, the potential has always been there. And now the football team is starting to put it together as a playoff contender right now. One of the 5 undefeated G5 teams left right now. But they decided to stay. So as of this recording, in the Mountain West, you have Air Force, UNLV, Nevada, Hawaii, New Mexico, Wyoming, and San Jose State. At least that we know of. The Pac-7, went from the 2-pack to the 6-pack to now, I guess, the 7-pack. Wazoo, Oregon State, Boise, Colorado State, San Diego State, Fresno State, and now it sounds like Utah State has decided to accept a membership. Now, with that being said, there were reports coming out. This is all over the place, right? We had reports this afternoon from refutable people. These are refutable people saying that Gonzaga, the Zags, joined this Pac-12 with a full share, even though they don't even have a football program. But then ever since then, we've been getting reports trickling in and out. Not a done deal. Just conversations. So if you were going to give Gonzaga a full deal without a football team, and we know that football drops this bus, why would I sign there if I'm Memphis? Why? And then I got to go travel to Spokane too? No, it don't work like that. But now the question is, how loyal are the AAC and the Sun Belt to each other, right? To themselves. Because, we told you about I just told you about the 4 schools that turned down the invite. Where does that leave Rice? Where does that leave North Texas? Now, if you're the Mountain West, you have more options, right? You got UTEP and New Mexico State in your neighborhood, if you will. Because, we talked about this. There's not much out west. What are you going to do? Pull in UC Davis, who's been trolling everybody with their renovation plans. Hopefully it comes to fruition. Sacramento State. We talked about the Dakota schools. We talked about the Montana schools. But if you're the Pac-12, you can't accept any of those schools because you have a brand to uphold. Right? You're the Conference of Champions. You were the Conference of USC and Oregon and Washington. UCLA. You can't backfill with the Dakotas. So what does that leave for the Pac-12? Does that leave North Texas? Maybe Texas State from the Sun Belt, which led into why I said, are they going to be loyal to each other? Because if you could grab, say, Rice and Texas State, but the problem is that you still need more because you have to bridge that gap. Because then you have your Mountain Division, and then you just have 2 Texas schools. So you have to expand further from there. But from there, if Texas State does leave, now the Sun Belt's a player, right? You go grab Liberty. Because Liberty's going to outgrow Conference CUSA the same way that Memphis did. The same way that Louisville did. The same way that Cincinnati did. Or do you pull from the AAC and say, hey, East Carolina, come on down. Come down here and play my Virginia schools. It's all up in the air right now. The question is, who's going to be loyal to who? Because UNLV decided to stay behind. Air Force decided to stay behind. But Utah State said, no, I'm out of here. But the Pac-12 has no TV deal that we know of which is probably another reason why Memphis and the gang turned them down. Because as I mentioned the other day, the AAC right now getting $7 million per school for these TV deals, Mountain West at $4 million. So I can understand why the Mountain West schools would jump. Besides the fact that, no disrespect, you want to be affiliated with Wyoming, New Mexico. Why? From a from a futuristic standpoint is what I'm talking about right now. You have your relationships, you have your bonds, you have your history. But we're talking about where am I looking at 15 years from now? I could either be beside New Mexico or I could be beside Colorado State, Boise, Wazoo, San Diego State. Even though those names don't sound like much, the access of recruiting that it gets you versus recruiting against Wyoming, right? So that's where we are right now. Is Gonzaga going to come or not? Is Gonzaga going to bring St. Mary's with them if they do come? Now, that might be worth looking into for a basketball conference because you might have to turn yourself into the West Coast version of the Big East. Because none of these schools outside of Boise State really ring bells in the college football world, which, as I said, drives the bus. And, oh, by the way, Boise State, Washington State this weekend. But then, if you look at the rest of these teams, still a lot to be desired as far as name value, market value, so on and so forth. So that leaves us picking up the bag and asking the question of, what now? But, I'm 2-5. I will be back tomorrow. Sports Reports Disordered will be back tomorrow. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, review. Do all the free things. Do all the good things.